Everyone thinks trucks still use manual transmissions because the industry is stuck in the past, too stubborn to change, too cheap to upgrade. That's the assumption. That's also completely wrong, because the engineers who build these machines tested automatics. They had the technology, they had the budget, and they looked at it and said no. A $500,000 truck. GPS, collision sensors, a dashboard that looks like mission control, and a stick shift on purpose. That's not a flaw. That's the most deliberate engineering decision on the road. By the end of this, you'll never pass a semi on the highway without understanding exactly what's happening inside that cab and why it's more sophisticated than anything sitting in your driveway. Here's what's actually at stake. America moves roughly 2/3 of all its freight by truck. Every piece of food on your shelf, every package on your doorstep, every beam and every building under construction, it got there in a truck. If the transmission fails on a mountain grade with 40 tons of cargo behind it, it's not an inconvenience. It's a runaway vehicle. Getting this system right isn't an engineering preference. It's a public safety problem that's been quietly solved for over a century. And the solution looks nothing like what you'd expect. Most people assume automatic is just better, smoother, smarter, more modern. And for your car, they're right. But here's the myth nobody questions. An automatic transmission works by reading what's happening right now and reacting. Speed, throttle position, load. The computer processes it all and shifts accordingly. For a 3,500-pound car doing the same commute every day, that's perfect. The weight barely changes. The computer handles it cleanly. But that's not the real reason trucks are different. A fully loaded semi weighs up to 80,000 pounds. That's the same as stacking 22 average cars directly on top of each other. And here's where the assumption completely falls apart, that weight changes entirely between trips. Empty flatbed one run, full load of steel coils the next. A standard automatic is programmed around predictability, but a semi's load is never predictable. And on a steep mountain grade with 40 tons of momentum behind you, a half-second delay in gear selection, completely normal for an automatic working through its logic, means the truck slows, loses power, and begins falling back against the grade. At that point, recovery is not guaranteed. Reacting is already too late, and that's the problem automatics have never fully solved. To understand how this got figured out, you have to go back to where it first went wrong. And it didn't happen on a highway. It happened on a muddy construction road in 1910. Early trucks were barely more than motorized wagons. Engines were weak, roads were unpaved, and the technology that lets modern drivers shift gears smoothly, synchromesh, the mechanism inside your car's gearbox that quietly matches gear speeds before engaging, didn't exist yet. If you shoved the lever without manually matching the engine speed first, the gear teeth ground together and shattered. You were stranded, miles from anywhere. With a cargo someone needed, so drivers invented a workaround. Press the clutch, move to neutral, blip the throttle to match engine speed. Press the clutch again, engage the next gear. 2 full clutch presses for every single gear change, up and down, all day. It was called double clutching, and it was grueling. But drivers who could do it smoothly, instinctively, without thinking, were worth serious money. Better routes, better pay, faster promotions. It wasn't just a driving technique, it was a professional credential, like a surgeon's steady hands, a pilot's calm scan across instruments. And this is where things get interesting, because that culture, built around a specific, difficult human skill, would eventually shape the entire future of truck engineering. Not just the machines, the people inside them. Here's the simple explanation first. A transmission does one thing. It keeps the engine in its power range, a narrow band where the engine actually produces real force. Too slow, it bogs down. Too fast, it spins uselessly. The transmission matches engine output to whatever the road demands. Low gear to move a massive load from a dead stop. High gear to cruise efficiently at highway speed. Your car does this with 4, 6, maybe 8 gears. A semi does it with 13 or 18. But here's the twist. It's not just about having more gears. A truck's transmission is actually two gearboxes bolted together and functioning as one unit. The first handles low range, crawling out of a loading dock, inching through a construction site, getting 80,000 pounds moving from a complete stop. The second handles high range, highway speeds, long mountain grades, sustained interstate cruising. One shifter in the driver's hand controls both boxes through what's called a splitter and a range selector. That's how 18 gear combinations come from a single lever. Looks complicated written down. In a professional driver's hands, it runs like sheet music they've played 1,000 times. They're not just picking a number on a dial, they're managing energy, weight, gravity, and momentum simultaneously, in real time. They see the hill coming half a mile ahead, select the right gear now, and carry full power all the way to the top without losing a single RPM. That's not just driving, that's anticipation. And on a 40-ton machine, the gap between anticipating and reacting isn't small, it's everything. Before we go further, if this is the kind of thing that makes you stop and think, hit subscribe and drop a like on this video. And leave a comment below. Do you think the manual transmission should be preserved, or is the AMT just better? Now back to the part nobody talks about. So why not just build smarter automatics? This is where the real myth falls apart completely. There's a critical difference between a true automatic and what modern trucks actually use. A true automatic uses a device called a torque converter, a fluid coupling that transfers engine power smoothly without a clutch pedal. It works beautifully for predictable, consistent loads, but torque converters lose efficiency under variable, heavy loads. They slip. They generate heat. In a machine built to run 500,000 miles before a major overhaul, that slippage compounds into serious cost, in fuel, in wear, in money. The manual gearbox has no fluid coupling, no slippage, direct mechanical connection between engine and wheels. At 80,000 pounds, that directness isn't a preference. It's the only option that doesn't bleed power on every single shift. Engineers learned this the hard way, in early highway tests through the Rockies in the 1950s, when loads got dramatically heavier and the limits of fixed automatic systems became impossible to ignore. Gearboxes grew. Driver skill requirements grew with them. By the 1970s, 13 and 18-speed transmissions were standard equipment on every long-haul rig. The physics demanded it. And that's only half the story. In the early 2000s, engineers brought this idea to production, what's now called an automated manual transmission, or AMT. From the driver's seat, it looks automatic, no clutch pedal, gears change on their own. But underneath it's still the same manual compound gearbox, same two-box system. A computer just operates the clutch and moves the shifter instead of a human hand. And crucially, the driver can override it instantly. That override is the entire point. When the computer guesses wrong, misreading a steep grade, hesitating at low speed in a tight dock, the driver takes over. Human judgment fills exactly the gap where the algorithm hesitates. So when headlines say trucks are finally going automatic, that's technically misleading. The manual gearbox is still there. The physics haven't changed. The computer is just handling the easy parts. But here's the part that gets quietly left out of every industry article. When AMTs became widespread, experienced drivers pushed back hard, and they weren't entirely wrong. It wasn't that the technology was worse, it was that a craft built over 70 years, a skill that defined what it meant to be a professional driver, was being made optional. These drivers weren't being stubborn. They were watching something disappear and saying so out loud. That friction slowed widespread AMT adoption by nearly a decade, an entire industry's timeline shaped by professional pride. That's not a footnote in trucking history. That's a lesson about what happens when engineering stops accounting for the humans running the machines. Today, roughly 80% of new Class 8 trucks ship with AMTs. The driver shortage made it practical, but AMTs add weight, complexity, and significant upfront cost. In extreme cold or high altitude, some systems still fail in situations where a manual gearbox would simply keep turning. And the pool of drivers who can run a traditional manual at a professional level is genuinely shrinking. Not because it was beaten by better technology, because it stopped being taught. Here's the fact almost nobody knows. The fundamental gear ratio logic inside a semi-truck transmission is identical to what controls a locomotive's electric drive motors, a mining truck the size of a two-story building, and the paddle shifters on a Formula One car. Completely different machines, completely different industries, same underlying principle. Match the power source to the load. Do it before the load changes, not after. Every massive machine ever built to move something enormous in conditions that never stay the same is still running on the same solution a driver worked out on an unpaved road more than 100 years ago. The 18-speed manual isn't a relic somebody forgot to update. It's a precision instrument built for a problem most engineers never face. Where the margin for error is measured in seconds, the stakes are measured in tons, and the solution has to work every single time. Next time a semi rolls past you on the highway, you're not looking at an industry that fell behind. You're looking at a problem that was so hard to solve, the solution hasn't needed to change in a century. That's not stubbornness. That's engineering done exactly right.